Matrix is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of Shorts with Liz Clark. With over 20 years as a dedicated supporter of the fitness industry, we're thrilled to continue a partnership geared towards success for all those who believe in better.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to Shorts with Liz, where we dive into the pulse of our industry and in short, sharp conversations. And today's guest is someone who's been tracking and shaping how media and fitness and wellness are evolving. Eric Malzone, or Eric Malzone, depending on if you're Italian enough to pronounce his name. But he's the host of the Future of Fitness podcast and the co-founder and CEO of the Podcast Collective, which amplifies some of the most influential voices in our space. So I'm really excited for this one, not just to explore where the media landscape is heading, but to also learn how platforms like this show can grow into something more impactful. And you've certainly learned so many lessons about that. So let's go ahead and jump in, Eric.
Yeah, I would love to. And Liz, thank you. Thank you for having me. First of all, it's always a pleasure talking to you and seeing what you guys are up to at HFA. And I know there's a lot of really good news coming out of the work you guys are doing recently. So maybe we can touch on that. But regardless, I love myself a good podcast. So this is a great way to start the day. I'm ready for you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we'll have fun today. So for those of you that might be under a rock, you might not know, but Eric, alongside with hosting one of the most successful podcasts in our industry, the Future of Fitness podcast, you've also created a unique PR system that showcases our industry voices. So can you tell us a little bit about not only the evolution of your podcast, but also the launch of the Podcast Collective?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not going to go all the way back, but I think I'll feed to you guys like what I think is relevant for the conversation. But not an atypical but fairly common course into the fitness industry. I was an athlete most of my life. I started competitive swimming at age 5. I found water polo around 11, played that all the way through college and club. And after college, wasn't sure what I was going to do. I got into the corporate sector, started doing sales jobs and various things like that. And when the opportunity arose, which was really just a text message from an old teammate that said, "Hey man, do you want to open a gym?" I was around 2008 and I was 6 months into doing CrossFit, and I had one beer at happy hour and I was like, texted him back. And this is back when T9 texting, if anyone's old enough to remember that. But I was like, yeah, let's do it. And that was it. Like, it was that simple. I just wanted out of corporate America. I wanted to be a business owner. I loved fitness and strength training and all those things. So it all collided really well. And 6 months later,
Did he know anything about running a gym?
No, I was the business mind. I went to business school, so that's why he got me. He's like, I need someone who can run numbers. Yeah. And to be honest, like the CrossFit model is not super complicated, at least back then. It's a group class model. It's very simple, straightforward. It was a great way actually to get an introduction into business. And we opened it and we ran that for 8 or 9 years. It was CrossFit Pacific Coast, which I believe is still open now under its third ownership group. Started another one in 2015 and then sold those in 2017. And I didn't know what I was going to do when I sold those. My wife and I decided, we wanted to get out of California and we wanted to move somewhere new, somewhere in the mountains. And we eventually ended up here in Whitefish, Montana. But I started podcasting more selfishly than anything, is I wanted to find out from people I know and respect what was coming around the corner in the industry, right? To use the hockey analogy, help myself skate to where the puck was going. And in turn, maybe, the 3 listeners, including my mom that were listening at the time, like maybe they'd be curious too. And so it just kept going. And really, I just didn't stop. So, 8 some odd years later, almost 500 episodes. And then I had the Fitness Blitz Radio, which was a daily one for a while, and a couple other little ventures along the way. But the evolution has really come to not quitting, staying in it, learning to conduct a good interview, getting the reps in, kind of graduating up and up and up to more high level guests, more bigger profile guests, and then refining the process along the way. So it's like there was never like a significant aha moment in those 8 years of what podcasting can be. It was just like little tweaks, little learnings that compound over time, and really just not quitting. That's about it. I just didn't stop. Really stubborn.
Yeah. Kind of the theme in our industry, I think, on many levels, right?
Yeah.
So as you talk about, higher profile guests and things like that. So what do you think have been the types of content that have proven maybe to be the most successful for wellness creators trying to break through the noise here?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say podcasts. I mean, just as far as type of content. And I think there's no better medium if you want to multi-purpose content. I mean, from this one interview that we're going to do today, Liz, you can have 10 different social media posts. You can have a blog. You can have a LinkedIn article. You can have, you name it. I mean, you can just keep going and going and going with how much you can create from one singular podcast. And not to mention that, but if you're doing an interview based format, you're also in the same length, you're deepening or starting new relationships with people in your network. So you and I are going to know each other much better at the end of this 45 minutes than we did 5 minutes ago, right? And that's just good business principles, I think, or just if you're a curious person. So I still think podcast is the best medium out there because you can do everything else from it. And it also has a very specific business development purpose or network building purpose. Or if you just want to learn, you can learn from some of the best experts out there by asking them to come on your show.
Yeah, and that's such good advice. I mean, it sounds simple to market it through all of the other marketing channels that we use, but I think that that's a mark sometimes that people unfortunately miss. They're just sort of organically just trying to market one thing when you have so many other channels to leverage. So
Yeah.
that's great advice. So you've seen so many voices come through the podcast collective. I laugh a little because I think you're over 800 and I'm like around 15. So I'm aspiring to be you. But what's that's maybe the most memorable voices or most impactful ones that you've done along the way? It's probably you've had to have some that have really shined through that are pretty memorable.
Yeah. It's all, when I get to interview people that maybe I've admired for a very long time, it's very special to me. Like I've had Kelly Starrett on my podcast numerous times. He was someone who was very instrumental in the early days of my CrossFit career. Rob Wolf, same thing. So these are very special to me personally, and the numbers pan out. Like people do like listening to these people and these experts. But I think, um, you know, people who are, I'll say a couple things about what I think makes people stand out. Number one, I think it's value, right? They have figured out how to create a ton of value for listenership. And that's not like they're not out there selling anything. You look at Dr. Stacy Sims, who's obviously come a long way, or Callie and Casey Means, who are very popular right now, especially in your world, Liz, right? These are all people who have created a tremendous amount of value with a unique message in the market. And they also know who they're talking to. So I think it's value, right? It really comes down to it. The ones that don't do well or don't stand out well, and no offense to anybody in the world of marketing, but I generally don't like to interview CMOs or anything like that because they tend to come at me with a bullet point of value of like, here's our value proposition of our business and what it is. That's not what people want to hear, right? So I think having unique value, providing, without selling anything is really critical. I think authenticity is very big too. I think vulnerability and being open and just being who you are. It's one of the fundamental principles that makes podcasts different or just long form content. I call it authentic media. That's what I refer to podcasts now as, like, it's authentic media. You really get to know someone. And if you look at the elections that we had, just a year ago, say what you will about whatever, who won or what your politics are. I don't care. The fact of the matter is, like, if you listen to that Trump Rogan interview, which by far dictated much of what happened in this election, you got to sit down and really understand who Donald Trump was over a 3-hour period. Now that's unique, right? So authenticity is a big part of it. And I think the last thing that really wraps it all up into a nice package is the ability to have tell stories, tell really good stories. Like, you want to get across a point, you can say, well, X% of this people do this, or you could wrap it into a story that makes a lot of sense. And it's very engaging. So all of that really comes down to being prepared and being good at your craft, having a unique message, being able to deliver it well, be yourself, be unique, all those things. So I don't think there's one single thing, but I think there's a lot of factors that go into it.
So as you're speaking, I'm literally kicking myself. Last week I had the pleasure of I was at an event with James Worthy, the former NBA star,
Oh,
LA
cool.
Laker, and we were at an
Yeah.
event together at night, and then the next day we were in the same airport having a beer together, and just a lovely man. And I should have invited him onto my podcast. I
Oh,
know
yeah.
Yes, right. So, okay, lesson learned to seize the moment when when you're with people like that. So, okay, all right. Um, so there's so many people in this space that are really also just starting out as you know you were years ago. And there's something different, right, about starting. And I think that what do you usually tell these sort of newer people in this space trying to shape their unique voice in the industry? I know you talk a lot about authenticity, but what is there any more there for folks that are new on the scene?
Yeah. I was just emailing a young founder about this just yesterday, and it all kind of rambled off into my email, and I'm like, oh wow, I'm like, that's actually the core of what I want people to know. I'm like, I should remember that. Maybe I'll talk to Liz about it. But I
Yeah.
think number one is like know what problem you are solving. So like, what are you out there to solve? What's the problem? What's the pain? What are people feeling? What's going to engage them? What's the hook, right? And then number two is like, how does that problem actually manifest in their lives? So truly understanding like, I was just listening to a podcast with Casey Mean. So this is good timing. She's talking about metabolic health. Okay. So what's the problem? Metabolic health. How's it actually manifest in people's lives? Well, diabetes, energy, brain fog, like, or obesity, right? Like all of these things. So how's it actually manifesting? What's the pain and what does that feel like to them? And then the last thing is like, how do you wrap that into a particular story? So how do you talk about metabolic health and this fact of like, Steve from accounting who was, 150 pounds overweight, obese, and then he started focusing on his metabolic health and what he did specifically and how that changed his life and all the relationships he had in his work and his career and all these things. So how do you do all those things? So under identifying the problem, how does that problem manifest in the audience's lives, and then what are the stories that they would resonate with to really feel the interview?
Yeah, and as you say that, I'm thinking you probably learned so much of that from your gym industry background, right? I mean,
Yeah.
people come to the gym generally with a problem or a goal, and right, and that's usually one of the first conversations is what are we trying to solve and how are we going to do it?
Yeah.
So isn't that interesting that you've done that in that space and been able to translate it over here? So I love that. So there's also people that are making all kinds of mistakes out there,
hmm
unfortunately. And what are some of the most common ones that you're seeing wellness influencers or podcasters when they're trying to build their own media presence?
Yeah. I'm doing a presentation tomorrow for the Wellness Growth Mastermind. So that's Brian Von Auken's group, really good group. But I've been thinking about this long and hard because that's one of the messaging I want to get across is where do people go wrong? And I think I'm going to say specifically in the world of podcasting, maybe even like B2B media, even more specifically, is people are too short and narrow in their view. So let me explain what that means. Like, people maybe start a podcast because they want to build an audience. So they'll start like, okay, well, X equals Y equals Z. So I create more content, I build an audience, those numbers grow. That's linear, right? So that's a very linear thought of how the value is established. There's so much more value to podcasting than just your audience growth. Like, I want to repeat that 10 times over. There's so much more value to your podcasting journey than just your audience growth. Now, it can be learnings, number one, right? It could be relationships, like I was talking about, which is the most underrated thing about podcasting is like, listen, um, trying to think of Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, got to interview her last year, right? If I just reached out and be like, hey, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, I would love to just talk to you and pick your brain. She's gonna be like, who is this buffoon? Right? Leave me alone. I'm too busy. If I say, hey, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, I have a podcast. I would love to have you be a guest. I'd be honored. We can talk about these topics. Here's the audience. Let me know if that's interesting. Now she says, yes, that's really powerful, right? Now you've just expanded your network in a very meaningful way. So I think there's a lot of different things. And the other thing, I always talk about this too, is like for the next 45 minutes that you and I are talking, Liz, my phone's off, right? I'm
Yep.
focused just on our conversation. Now, from a personal standpoint, how often during the day do we have an opportunity to just completely talk and focus on one conversation with one person? It's pretty incredible. So there's a lot of that. The other thing I would say when I talk about short in view is that people don't plan for long enough, right? I think most podcasts end at episode 7, which is a real shame because you're not even getting going yet. Like you haven't found your voice, you haven't found how you like to do interviews, you haven't found out the type of content. So if you're going to start, commit to a very long frame. I'd say at least 50, ideally 100 episodes. Because I don't want to go back and listen to my first 20. I'm sure the guests I had were fantastic. I highly doubt I was any good at what I was doing. And, 900 later, I feel more competent, but still very insecure about my interviewing skills. But it's like you just have to give it more time. That's it. So think broadly, think about all the potential benefits of it, and also give it some time.
I love that. And I think I said this before, we're episode 11. So I'm glad to hear that I've made it past 7. And we definitely have aspirations, to be in the 50s and the hundreds and so on and so forth. So I will go back and listen to these, but hopefully, yes, to learn and to hone your skills, which are not necessarily something that we were trained to do, to do an
Yeah.
interview like this. And to your point, it's a one-on-one conversation with no distractions. And there's a little bit of pressure sometimes with that, and that's just fine. But
There's no formal training for this
yeah,
kind of thing that I know of,
yeah,
right? Maybe that's an
not yet,
opportunity I know.
right?
Yeah,
I'm sure
right.
I'm sure that there are the university majors popping up all over the place now. So
I found
maybe
the best type of training.
we could co-guest lecture something somewhere. Maybe
Yeah,
in Whitefish. We'll go to,
yeah, let's do
I'll
it.
come out to Whitefish. Maybe we'll go down to Missoula. We'll do a little road show, go to Postman.
I think it's great. I love it. And one of the best things I found actually was, and it was so random, is I ended up taking some improv comedy classes when I owned my gym in Santa Barbara. We actually had them at our gym once a month for a period of time. And that was where I learned a lot about interviewing from improv. Just having the faith that if you stick in, you're present, that like the interview will kind of unfold. And I thought that was really interesting. So I don't know, short takeaway there.
That's great. That's great. Well, improv doing stand up is like on my bucket list. I'm really intimidated to do it, but in my infinite spare time, one day I'm gonna go to an open mic. I'm not gonna tell anybody. I'm just gonna do
Oh
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do it.
Yeah. Um, So you've also built platforms that support others. And how do you personally sort of define media success in such a fast changing landscape? I mean, this industry is evolving so quickly, which is so amazing, almost sometimes too quickly to be able to keep up. So how do you define the success with everything moving so fast?
Yeah. It's a really interesting question. I would say it starts by clearly defining expectations, right? So everyone who creates content has a different reason why they do it. There's kind of the hobbyists who are just really interested in, I don't know, Game of Thrones, right? They want to start a podcast or a channel about Game of Thrones episodes and talk about it or whatever's hot in the moment. And there's the B2B media landscape where I think I live most of the time, which it really comes down to, is it actually moving the needle in your business? Like, is it, and it's hard to measure because, it's such a flywheel effect in the media world. And you never know, like it's hard to directly attribute maybe a lead or a partnership or something like that to one specific form of media. It's just like this comprehensive flywheel that you need to get spinning. You had Anthony from the Fin Insider on not too long ago. You guys kind of talked about this flywheel effect that they've created there, which is a really good example. It's a really good case study of how to do B2B media in a very creative and effective way. So I think, is it actually moving the needle? And how do you attribute that if you can? And the other thing is like, are you enjoying it? Like, are you actually enjoying the media? Because if you're not, it's going to be really hard to sustain. And sustaining is really, it's key, right? It's you got to continue to make that. You can't just start, stop, give it some time. You got to keep this thing, you got to feed the beast, as they say. You got to keep feeding the beast. So I think that's the biggest thing is, how do you define expectations? How do you know if it's actually moving the needle? And then don't stop,
Yeah. I'm really lucky that I have Katie on my team. I think I'm the beast
which is
and she
great.
keeps feeding me and I love it. And so I'll see on my calendar like, oh, who am I talking to? That's awesome. Good job, Katie. So this was great. So what's changed a little bit in your approach to podcasting and sort of content strategy over the last few years? Maybe I have to imagine maybe some things have stayed the same, but some have changed, and why have you done that?
Yeah. It's probably changed a number of times, but I think the biggest thing is I've learned to stay disciplined. So what I mean by that is having some guardrails. I love interviewing people. I will chase squirrels all day long, right? To find something that I think is cool and curious. Um, but I have to stay focused on like, well, who am I actually serving? Like with the Future of Fitness podcast, like who are my listeners? What's going to bring them value? Am I being an advocate for them with my guests? Am I asking the questions that in their mind they're thinking like, God, I wish Eric ask this question, right? Like, and that's how my mind goes. Is like I want to be an advocate for the audience. And when I say like having guardrails, I mean I have certain buckets of types of guests that I want on my podcast for very specific reasons, right? Now, will I stray from that often? Well, yeah, of course, but I try to really stay disciplined, keep the guardrails tight, so then making sure that my content and my guest selection and curation is really honed in on the outcomes that I want. So I think that's something will continue over time because I have to. It's just like dieting, right? You got to stay disciplined. You got to put the guardrails in. You're going to fall off every once in a while, but you got to get right back on. I think the other thing that I've really focused on over the last few years is email growth and engaging my list, which has turned out to be really beneficial. I kind of thought of it as like a secondary benefit, but now I realize it's very much up at the front. So I've been focusing a lot on that. And then also I figure out some really good tactics for paid growth, which we'll probably get into with like the services we do at Podcast Collective, but well-targeted, efficient, real paid growth strategies for your audience. Cause I've been burned numerous times by, snake oil and fraud services. So those are the big ones for sure.
So talk a little bit more about the paid growth right now. I mean,
Yeah.
is it folks approaching you targeting who you think would be a, good message,
Mhm.
spreader with you? Again, the snake oil thing. And I think what's interesting and evolving again so quickly about this industry is there are so many people coming out so quickly with new things, cool things, maybe scary things. And so how do you sift through that with a paid strategy to make sure you don't get burned?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, I mean, I've been burned by farms primarily, which they'll be like, "Hey, we'll get you," and it's no different than social media followers. Like people will pay to increase their social media following, but they're just fake, right? And it's really hard to figure that out. So, yeah, that's happened. I've dumped a lot of money into just promoting on Instagram or things like that. One particular reel I boosted on LinkedIn. As you probably know, LinkedIn advertising is ridiculously expensive. I don't know how they get away with it. But what we found out is like more of a banner ad strategy that's very specific to
Yep.
online publications. So we'll take clips, right? We'll hand select publications that we want to be on, whether it's Men's Journal or, you name it, right? And then we'll put those on there. We'll do a very the cost per click is super cheap. And we found it just grows audience because it grows subscribers, which is the biggest thing. Like if you can see your Spotify or YouTube subscribers go up, that's really important. But we are primarily focused just on the audio growth. Like we don't do a lot of YouTube yet. We haven't got into that. In fact, my YouTube is still kind of it could use more work. Let's put it that way. But yeah, that's been something that's really effective. And I mean, for like a $500 budget, I can 5x my downloads on one specific episode. So a lot of times I'll collaborate with people who've been on my show and I'll say, hey, I think this turned out really well. If you want, we can put a $500 budget behind it. Let's split it, or you guys pay us, and we'll take care of it. So that's been a really good way to collaborate and grow audience in a very predictable way.
Wow, I love that. So smart. Maybe we can collaborate.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Um, so again, sort of back to maybe these creators and brands who are all trying to figure out what platform that they should actually invest time and energy into. And how do you interact with them and how do you help these folks?
Yeah. There's no easy answer to that, Liz. I think, it really comes down to time and resources, right? I think that depending on what your particular goal, your expectations are, what you want to get out of your podcast or your media. Uh, when I was first starting, it was nothing but some plug-in headpieces and my computer and my MacBook, right? And that was it. That's all I had. Then I eventually, bought a microphone. I was like, "Ooh, this is fancy and
I know
professional."
I'm having microphone envy right now.
Oh yeah, you should definitely get one. I mean, it's like it's the best investment you can make because audio quality is really big. But I think that's it. Like, well, is it going to be just like for podcasting? Let's just say, is it going to be just audio, right? Because that's the most ineffective, or not ineffective. It's the most cost-effective, sorry, way to get your voice out there, and you can do it. It's very low bandwidth. You can do it just about anywhere. If you want to add video, that's a whole nother thing, right? If you want to add YouTube, that's a whole nother thing. So you have to just look at what's your time, what's your resources that you have available. And it's okay to start small, just do an audio podcast, let's say every other week, right? That's fine. Very cost effective, right? And then do you want to outsource your editing and your publishing? It's up to you. Do you want to learn to do it on your own? Totally up to you. And then what social platforms do you choose? I don't think that's, rocket science nowadays. It's like, well, where do you want to build your audience? Is it B2B? You probably want to be on LinkedIn and X, right? If it's going to be, consumer wellness, you're probably going to want to be on Instagram and TikTok. So that's all the marketing world, but I think it's just that. And then all the other stuff on top is like, do you want to write blogs? Do you want to write articles? Do you want to write white papers? Do you want to consolidate these things into ebooks? Like all that stuff. You can do a million different things, but it really just matters, comes down to your time, your resources, and what your expectations and goals are.
And what is your advice on what the sweet spot is for time? How long what's everybody's attention span look like?
Yeah. Uh, no really good answer for that. I think it depends on, well, it depends is the honest answer. I like hour blocks, just because that works into my guest schedule really easily. And I think our lives tend to work in hours, right? People work out for an hour. Whatever they're doing is generally in hours. So I think that's just a unit metric that people have found it really digestible, but you can also get very in depth, and in the weeds within an hour of interview too. Now you look at some of these, the biggest podcasts in the world, and we're talking 3 hours, 4 hours, right? I don't know if any
Yeah.
like I mean there's ones I was listening to one on what was it? Not How I Built This, but it was another one on the brand Hermes. I don't know if I'm saying it right. The
Oh
fashion
yeah, it's
brand.
Hermes.
Yeah,
Hermes.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. And it was like 4.5 hours long. It took me like 5 days to get through, but it was so good. So I don't know. I don't think there is that. I think you just got to look at like number one, who's your audience? What kind of time do they have? What's the type of topics? How much frequency do you want to put into this? Frequency that you can be consistent with as far as publishing. So no easy answer to that. You just have to kind of play around with it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, we are looking on this side of things. I'm really interested right now in 45-minute windows because I think you're right. Our brains think in hour-long chunks.
Yep.
But even when I'll put a meeting together, that it doesn't probably need to be a whole hour, but I'm going to show you that it's significant. So I'm going to make it 45 minutes and it's not just a half hour, which is,
Yeah. Yeah.
that type of thing. It seems to work well for us. So,
Yeah. I
um,
mean, the biggest thing is you got to think about this, and we'll go back to the topic that I mentioned earlier, is it's got to be sustainable and repeatable over a long period of time. So, commit to a year or 100 episodes or whatever comes first. But how do you make that sustainable and repeatable within your personal routine and that of your guests if you're going to have a guest format? So I think that's the biggest consideration. It's what's realistic for you to sustain, and start with that.
how many do you film a week?
Uh, I go in spurts, but I'll do anywhere between like 4 a week to zero, depending on how many I have in the queue.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's we'll go to events, like I'll go to HFA and maybe I'll record 2 or 3 on site. But yeah, it just depends. I always kind of managing my queue very mindfully.
Yeah, the scheduling is no joke either. So
No,
I bow down to you being able to do 4 a week. That's really admirable.
thank you.
Um, so speaking of others, I think you've got a couple people from my team coming on your podcast soon, because
Hmm.
we've got a lot of cool stuff going on here in
Yeah.
Washington. And I don't know if have thought about sort of the framework of that yet or not. But us coming off of a big fly-in here.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting times for HFA. So, don't know if you have any questions for that, or if you want to save them for your next podcast with my guys, but happy to touch on any of that if you'd like.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I mean, we were talking, I think, previous recordings. I remember hearing about the Fit Act right when my gym ownership career was starting. It's very early. And we've seen it kind of going through waves of, kind of seemed to disappear for a while, and then people would start talking about it again. And so I know you guys have made some huge progress on that. And I'm excited to cover that because I think that's a huge win. And, right now, and this is a question I have for you, Liz, I guess, turn the table here, but we seem to have more than ever before, at least in my tenure within the industry, political will that seems to be aligned to make some change. A, would you agree with that? And B, why, like, how excited are you? What are the real expectations that we can have for an industry? What can happen over the next 3.5 years?
Okay. Well, this could be a whole other podcast,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm going to save it because I'm going to let Mike and Anton talk about it. But I think you are correct. We do have more political will than we've ever had before. Part of that goes back, honestly, to a very strategic direction from the then URSA board to change leadership, to have it be a leader that would focus on advocacy and communications. And that's my background. I've never run a gym. I've never, I've gone to gyms my whole life, but the running it, no, I haven't done. And so what I've said is, if you want somebody in the seat that knows how to do advocacy and how to run an effective association focused on advocacy, then I'm probably the right person for the job. And that's how it all got started, right? And so now I've built out my government affairs team. And that's why it was so important to rebrand the organization so quickly to getting here, because as we're announcing ourselves on the scene, because we really were, nobody knew who we were as an industry whatsoever. And that was sad. And that's why we were left behind, right? It's why our industry was the first to close and the last to open. We had no political juice and no relationships. You talk about relationships, this relationship you and I have, this is the same relationship that I've been working on for decades in Washington, D.C. with the policymakers that are going to impact our businesses. So that's, how I've spent my day to day in recent years. And because of that, and I don't want to say this is all about Liz. It's just because I've been fortunate to have a lot of relationships to be able to leverage for our industry. And so having done that historically over time and to get to where we've gotten, and the most literally all the stars aligning like they have, but that was no accident, right? That was the fact that the industry was talking about this at a lower level for years and years and years. We've been talking to the White House behind the scenes. We've been talking to Kelly Means, some of the people you talk about. We've been doing all the right stuff in recent years. And so politically, again, say what you will about where this election landed, I felt very confident that this was going to be our best shot at getting fit across the finish line. Now,
Awesome.
We've got some work to do, because we have a lot of work to do because it's not across the finish line yet, but some basic education to our industry who do not understand how hard it is to get legislation passed. It has been something, again, that we've been working for almost 2 decades. And so if we are able to get it done, it will be monumental. People are going to write books about it, I promise you. So
Wow.
it's been a lot of work, and so I'm really cautiously optimistic. But the good news is that we're such a good story industry that, we're making people healthier, we're preventative healthcare, we're doing really good things, and a good story that members of Congress can relate to. The challenge is that we're amongst every other special interest that's out there. And so when you're sitting next to every other special interest with all these folks, we're a little bit of differentiator because they can personally relate, versus maybe a conversation about tariffs or taxes or other stuff that is also obviously critically important. But so that was a long-winded answer, but to say, yes, we've got the will, we've got the opportunity, but we also still have a lot of work to do, even in Congress right now. 60% of members of Congress are brand new. And that happens every 2 years, maybe not that high of a number. So we know we've been talking about Fit Forever. Even just in my meetings a couple of weeks ago, half of those members of Congress had never heard of it. And then they heard of it and they go, well, yeah, duh. Right. So that's why we need hundreds of voices to come and to have those meetings with us. So it's a really powerful event that I think people really enjoy. And we got to get you down to it next year and just continue to build relationships, because if and when we get this done, there's going to be something else we need help with. And that's how the game's played. So,
yeah. It's a really exciting time, Liz, I think, for the industry. I mean, I'm not the only one who's been in here in the industry for a while and feels a renewed sense of energy and optimism and excitement for some reason. Whether it's just, I think it's the configuration of multiple things, from the political wheel that we were just talking about to the consumer focus on health to education to technologies and things like that are advancing more access to better health, right? But there's a lot of things converging on this moment in time, and I think the opportunity is right for us to really make some significant headway. And we're already seeing it this year, right? I mean, gyms and health clubs are crushing it right now, and that's a really exciting sign. And I think when the health clubs and the gyms are doing really well, that provides so much opportunity for the rest of the industry to come in and do other things in and around that. But that's kind of the core. That's like the heartbeat of our industry, you know?
Yeah, and we've got sort of an underlying campaign that we want to launch called the 30% by 2030. And how do we have 30% of Americans active and moving and joining gyms by 2030? Right now, I think we've got new numbers coming out very soon, so I won't spoil those. But our last year's numbers were 24.5%. And so, 5.5% is a lot to get to. So how do we just get 1%? How do we get 2%? How do we get those people off the couch? And I think what's so cool is all the different modalities that are coming out that maybe are not so intimidating. Like, if you've been an inactive person most of your life, I don't think you're going to get off the couch and go to a CrossFit. I wish you
you
would,
shouldn't.
but I don't think that's how it starts, right? So it's how do we make it fun? How do we make it approachable, accessible, affordable? And that's going to be really fun stuff for us to figure out, I think, in the next few years.
Yeah, it's just the ultimate challenge of meeting people where they're at.
Yeah.
And that's been something that we've failed to do effectively over the years. And, it's we've done a really good job of keeping people in our vertical extremely healthy and fit. And we seem to be actually growing a gap between the rest of the rest of our country. We're like, we're getting healthier and fitter, and we're doing all this cool longevity stuff, but we're leaving everyone behind. So we need to meet people where they're at, like you said, make it easier and more accessible for them to join the effort. And it's as simple as getting more sleep, walking, lifting a little bit of weights, eating healthier. It doesn't have to be super complicated.
Right.
So,
And I think we have a tremendous opportunity if we get the conversation right around GLP-1s. I think we're seeing signs that over 10% of Americans are going to be on one in the next few years. And so, okay, if that's what it took to start to lose weight, what can we do to help continue that journey for folks? I think is going to be a really, really tremendous opportunity for us.
Yeah.
But now we're going all over the place. We're not staying in your
Welcome to my world. Yeah. Squirrels everywhere.
That's right. Including literally in my backyard. They're going crazy. So no, as we kind of round out here at our time, I'd love to just sort of close out with you that if you had any piece of advice to offer someone who wants to grow a credible media presence in wellness today, what would that be? And that's a pretty big question, but you've been so successful in your own right. And I know so many people in our industry are looking at what you've built. And just any kind of advice to people would be great.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you two answers to that. One's a shameless plug is contact us, the podcast collective. If you're in the fitness, health, and wellness industry. So we do three things. I failed to mention this at the beginning when you asked me, so I apologize. But we do, after a year and a half or 2 years now, almost, of what we do, we are really, really good at placing executives and founders and thought leaders on a podcast specifically for the purpose of business development. We're excellent. right? I'm fully confident in what we're doing. Like our clients have been with us for a long time. We're growing. We have A+ clients. The other thing we do is we launch B2B podcasts. So if you have a very specific goal for your business of why you would want to launch a podcast, we will take from concept all the way to fulfilling having your first episodes published and launched. You have a machine ready to go and you just have to keep it spinning. We'll do that. The other thing we do is we grow podcasts. So we place people on podcasts, we start podcasts, we grow podcasts. So contact us if you have an idea. Now, getting back to your question, I think the fundamental thing of people who want to commit or create a media presence is just commit, right? I can't say that. It's not a linear path. It's messy, right? Especially when you're starting. It's just messy. You don't know what you're really doing. You're kind of trying it out. You're figuring it out. You're going to screw up an interview. You're going to forget to hit record. You're going to do all these things that are just going to happen, right? And you can't let them deter you from the long vision of like, okay, I always told myself this was a 5-year plan, right? Like I'm going to start podcasting. It's a 5-year vision. I'll reevaluate at 5 years. Turned out 5 years, I was like, okay, I can do this. There's something here. Now, how do I build on it? So I think that's the biggest thing is just commit to it. Like, don't stop. Don't get frustrated. If you're not getting the traction you want early on, it's okay. If you say something stupid, it's okay. All that stuff's fine. Because you know what? Number one, people forget really fast. If you're thinking everyone's thinking about you and the thing you said on your podcast, they're not. So just keep going. And I think that's the biggest thing. If you need someone to help you push you along the way, contact me. I'm happy to give you a little nudge in the right direction.
I love that. Well, thank you. You've been so tremendous for our industry and forward thinking and giving back, and just so happy to have you in the seat, and so happy that you were able to join us today, Eric. This was really fun, and just look forward to more to come.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Liz. As you can tell, I love talking about this stuff. So thank you.
All right, we'll see you soon.